So today we have got a lot to get to, and we're going to start today off with an Alabama video covering everything from the newest transfer portal news on Kyle Edwards to camps this week going into this weekend and all of the newest recruiting news as it pertains to recruits on campus, and we're here to break it all down. But before we do, as always, y'all know the drill. I want to hear from y'all. Hop down to the comments, give me a Y for yes or an N for no. Do you feel like even with the two transfers of Keelan Robinson and Kyle Edwards that the Crimson Tide still have one of the most loaded running back rooms in the nation? And let me know what you're thinking there. And if you're new to the channel, be sure to subscribe, hit that bell notification. That way you don't miss any of my content, because I do constant college football uploads and you don't want to miss them. And if you enjoyed that content, be sure to like, comment down below. Those interactions are massive for content creators such as myself. But with all that being said, let's kick this off with the Kyle Edwards transfer portal news, because it is the second Alabama running back to enter their name into the portal. And one of the things I think we need to talk about as it pertains to this running back room is how incredibly loaded it is. It's easy to think about on surface level, but then when you really break it down, it is awe-inspiring. There are 3 former 5-star guys on this running back room right now. And even though Jace didn't finish out as a 5-star, that was only because of his injury in high school. Right? When he was out there able to play and able to do everything healthy, he was a 5-star, one of the highest rated running backs in the nation in his class, all when healthy. He's a 5-star running back. And then you have Trey Sanders, that when he gets healthy in college is going to be a terror on the football field. He is going to be really, really awesome, especially in this Alabama system with the depth of ability in which he possesses. And then you add in Kamar Wheaton, someone who we've been talking about at length here recently on this channel, because I don't feel like people understand exactly how good Kamar is, right? It's one thing to watch his highlights and be impressed, but then when you add in with the track speed that he possesses, this kid has home run hitting ability. Not to mention Roydell Williams, who is a top 100 recruit, and Brian Robinson, who many believe will have a just standout season this year. The Alabama Crimson Tide running back room is phenomenally loaded, so it is always unfortunate to lose such talented guys such as Kyle Edwards and Keelan Robinson, but at the same time, when you look at this running back room, the Crimson Tide are still glowing with confidence with what they have in this running back room with Brian Robinson, Jace, Trey, Roydell, and now Kamar Wheaton. And then if you look into the future, you have Emmanuel Henderson, the 5-star in the next class. Unfortunate to lose the depth, but the Crimson Tide have still got plenty of running back depth stockpiled. This room is as deadly as it was 2 months ago. This room is phenomenal. But now let's talk about some camp and some recruits that have been on campus this week. And I want to start it off with the defensive line, because two very important defensive linemen were able to camp with the Crimson Tide this week. One of them is a player that I have been talking about a lot as it pertains to why the Crimson Tide should have optimism with their class, and the other one is a player that I've been talking about a lot because I think he's one of the most exciting players in the nation. And we'll kick off with the latter first, and that's Hero Kanu, the defensive tackle from Germany. Now, I've made a few videos on Hero Kanu talking about how he is one of the fastest, if not the fastest, rising player in the nation. I mean, goodness gracious, he had 17, 18 D1 offers in the span of like a week or two, because of how exceptionally he's playing out there in those big boy leagues in California. This is a kid who comes from Germany, has a soccer background, and when you watch his tape, it absolutely makes sense. Elite footwork, really, really good hand fighting for a guy who comes from soccer, but the elite footwork is already there. He's got tons of explosion and is incredibly athletic, standing 6'5". Really, really nimble too. He had a phenomenal camp at Alabama. From everything that has been reported, not only did he really enjoy his time there, but he blew the coaching staff away. Nick Saban loved what he saw, and he walked away with a committable offer, something that we are going to have to watch. Now, Kanu poured over his experience at Alabama while he was there, talking about how he really enjoyed the aspect of the competition that is so ingrained with the Alabama Crimson Tide, how it is iron sharpens iron, and that was on full display in the camp, and that was something that he really, really liked, something that he talked about. So this is going to be a situation that we have to watch. But now let's turn our attention to the former defensive lineman I was talking about, and that is 5-star defensive tackle Mikel Williams. Now, Mikel Williams is an individual who I talked about and have talked about a little bit since Alabama's A-Day. And if you'll remember, we talked about how Williams visited the Crimson Tide Tide's A-Day at the time and was very, very interested in Alabama, and Alabama very interested in he as well. But the interesting thing about Williams is for all of the interest he had in Alabama, he was an individual that still needed to camp to really get that committable offer from the Crimson Tide. Remember, Alabama loves to evaluate their players in person, much like Clemson. The Crimson Tide have their own system for evaluation, so they want anybody they can to come in, get evaluated there, so that way they know what to look for, they know what to expect, and they have their eyes on the recruits that they would like. Williams gets to the Crimson Tide, able to camp this week. Another situation like Hero Kanu. Not only does he enjoy his time, but really impresses the Alabama Crimson Tide coaching staff. In fact, the coaching staff were talking to him about how important of a recruit he would be for the Crimson Tide. And as it stands right now, Williams currently has a crystal ball put in for the Georgia Bulldogs, but he talked about development. And if you're talking about development on that defensive front, you might not be able to go anywhere better than the Alabama Crimson Tide. If you're talking about a battle between Alabama and Georgia, Alabama looks to be in a very good position with both Kanu and Williams. We're going to have to keep up with both of them. Kanu is on his Dream Chasers tour, which is what they call the tour of him and the other guys from different countries that are just taking over high school football right now. And it is really, really cool. If you need to look it up, because all of these guys are incredibly athletic. A tight end is in that tour just absolutely wowed coaches. Another guy who walked away with a committable offer, another name we're going to have to look at. But now let's talk about some visitors and camp this weekend. And if we're talking about some unofficial visitors, there's two names I want to just kind of peer into and talk about very briefly. That is LT Overton. We mentioned him the other day. So very briefly on Overton, the number one player in the class of 2023, has family ties to multiple top-tier institutions in the nation: Alabama, A&M, Oklahoma, and currently lives in Georgia, very familiar with the Bulldogs. This is going to be a really unique prospect battle as this heads into the 2023 year because of those ties to all these different institutions. This is going to be an insanely fun battle for us to keep up with, for us to watch, but this is a battle that still has a lot in the making, something we're going to just kind of have to put a bookmark in. The other unofficial guy I want to talk about is 2023 cornerback Tony Mitchell. Now, Tony Mitchell is so important because the state of Alabama is absolutely loaded in the class of 2023. You don't believe me? Go ahead and go forward a year. Look at the class of 2023 and see how Alabama could just run away with the whole thing in recruiting in the class of 2023 based on the state of Alabama. Tony Mitchell is one of those guys, someone that this staff is prioritizing, so planting that seed early is good for the Crimson Tide. But to close this out, there are two players I want to focus on, both on the defensive side. 5-star Jeremiah Alexander from the state of Alabama, and then 5-star... But to close this out, there are two players I want to focus on. 5-star defensive player Jeremiah Alexander. Now, Jeremiah Alexander is a very important piece to the Crimson Tide, being from the state of Alabama. This is a kid who the Tide have a crystal ball on for 24/7 sports. However, he is coming away from a Clemson visit in which he was blown away by a lot of what Clemson had to say, a lot of what Clemson had to offer. So this weekend is going to be very interesting to hear kind of how he walks away from Alabama, because he walked away from Clemson saying that they might be the favorite. This could be a very important battle. This weekend could be very important in that battle. Brian Allen is a kid who is currently committed to Texas, recently got that Alabama offer, reacted to it on Twitter. We talked about it at the time, how excited he was for that Alabama offer, and not long after, instantly got to the Crimson Tide to get a visit planned out, and he will be on campus this weekend. This is another name we have got to watch with his time with the Crimson Tide, how this all plays out, because he could be on flip watch. If you're a Texas Longhorn fan, this is a kid who could be flipping, because the Crimson Tide look to be in a phenomenal position right now with Brian Allen. He loved that offer. So as it stands, we have a running back transferring out, making two running backs transferring from the Crimson Tide thus far, but this running back room is still so loaded that it is incredible. I mean, this room is just slam packed. And then when we look further into the ability of Alabama to get guys on campus this week for camps, for official visits, for unofficial, whether we're talking Mikel Williams, Hero Kanu, Jeremiah Alexander, Tony Mitchell, Brian Allen, there is so much room for excitement at the University of Alabama, and it's just getting started. So I cannot wait to hear what y'all think. Hop down to the comments, let me know. That's it. See ya.